Thank you for coming. My name is Jack Fang. I'm a gastroenterologist at Providence Mission. And today we are excited to have a special speaker, Dr. Wanjun Bae. He's Chief of Gastroenterology at Mission, also my colleague. He's going to give a talk about colorectal cancer and screening. And afterwards, we're going to have some refreshments. The restroom is also on the other hallway if you need one. And then Daryl, you're going to come up afterwards to give a few remarks as well, right? Okay. And I want to thank all the staff that helped prepare for this program. So let's give a warm welcome, Dr. Bae.
Hi. Thank you everyone for taking your time to join us this evening. And I also want to thank Dr. Fang and Harvest Church for inviting us and providing this opportunity to have an outreach talk on colon cancer. So my name is Wanjun Bae. I'm a gastroenterologist, and tonight we're going to talk about the importance of colon cancer, prevention, and screening. So before we do that, I'll just briefly go over the functions of digestive tract. Your stomach mainly serves to break up the food, kind of mix up the food, and pass it on to your small bowel. Your small bowel is about 20 feet long, and its main job is to absorb all the nutrients. So it's probably the most important part in your digestive tract. And then here's a colon, colon is actually, colon is divided. Is it pointer here?
Oh, you got a pointer.
Colon is divided into different sections. As you can see in the cecum area is where basically the other end of your colon, where your colon is attached to your small bowel, and it goes up to ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and it loops around the sigmoid colon, and finally attaches to the last part of the colon called rectum, where it's and anus. So colon main job is to absorb water and electrolytes and basically produce feces and eliminate feces. It's about 5 feet long, and rectum is the very last part, basically coordinating bowel movements. So colon cancer, what is colon cancer? It's basically cancer that occurs after unregulated growth in the colon and the rectum. This occurs after accumulation of DNA mutations, which leads to loss of control over growth regulation. Most cancers, pretty much all cancers, come from precursor polyps. You don't just all of a sudden develop cancer. You develop polyp, and then you go through this slow multi-step process from polyp that slowly develops into cancer. And thankfully, that process is slow, about average of 10 years. But then what is colon polyp? Polyp is a benign, that's a benign growth that appear in the inner lining of the colon, and about 50% of individuals over the age of 50 develop polyps. Now, not every polyp is precancerous polyp, but this polyp called adenoma, which is truly a precancerous polyp, we expect about 30% by the age of 50, and that goes up to 50% by the age of 70. And the risk of developing polyps are higher. And of course, as you get older, you develop more polyps, and men tend to have more polyps than women. But not all polyps become cancer. About 10% of these precancerous polyps will eventually become cancer. Like I said, the process is kind of long. And here's that polyp process sequence here. The small adenomatous polyp, most of them will remain as small and stay small polyps, but about 10% will eventually become invasive cancer. And this process, about 85% of the time, is pretty slow, like I said, 10 years. But there are these rapid growers, about 10 to 15% of people who with polyps will develop this rapid cancer, and over the 2 to 5 years. Those are the dangerous ones. If you look at cancer statistics in America, you can see in men and women, colon cancer is third leading cancer in all different organs. And if you look at the 2025 estimated new cancer cases in both women and men, colon about 71,000 and women and 82,000 in men in 1 year. Again, third leading cancer. Now, if you look at the people who die from colon cancer, both men and women, women is blue, men is red. Colon cancer is number 2 cancer-related death among all different cancers. So this is quite high in number and deadly cancer. So if we look at what are some of the risks of colon cancer, in any individual, average lifetime risk of colon cancer is about 1 in 25, 1 in 23 men, 1 in 25 in women. So it's about 4.5% or so in just average individual. Again, incidence is kind of higher in men than women, probably because of different multiple factors. And important part of this is 1 in 3 individuals with colon cancer have some sort of family history of colon cancer. So this is very important. We always ask patients about their family history. Again, the number of people dying from colon cancer is quite high. If we break down, these are some of the main causes of colon cancer in pie chart. If we break it down, the majority, 60% are sporadic, meaning it's an accumulation of mutations throughout your life. It's part of aging. As we age, we accumulate more mutations, and these are sporadic mutations that you develop and develop into cancer. And then there's 30% familial. Again, like I told you, 1 in 3 people with family history. This is why it's important. If there's any family history of colon cancer, that raises your risk of having colon cancer. And then there's small part of 10% hereditary. These are pretty rare, pretty significant genetic syndrome, and this is rare, thankfully. But if you have this FAP, which is familial adenomatous polyposis syndrome, or hereditary non-polyposis colorectal cancer, otherwise known as Lynch syndrome, those are pretty deadly. Almost 100% you will develop colon cancer. Again, we talked about this briefly. Lynch syndrome, risk of colon cancer reaches about 90%. But the part about Lynch syndrome, you also have risk of all kinds of different cancers: endometrial, ovarian, small bowel, stomach, bladder, and breast cancer. And then polyposis syndrome, it's pretty much 100%. And these individuals will have polyps carpeting the colon by the age of late teens or early 20s. And when we have these patients with the syndrome, we recommend going for prophylactic colectomy before they even reach 25. So if you do have family history of colon cancer, how much does it raise your risk? So if you look at it, if you have 1 or more first-degree relative with colon cancer, your risk goes up about 2-fold higher. But then, if you have 1 or more first-degree relative who have colon cancer before the age of 50, your risk goes up to about 4-fold higher. Same with if you have 2 or more first-degree relative with colon cancer at any age, your risk also goes up 4-fold higher. So those 2 groups are pretty significant. Aging. If we look at the age and colon cancer, again, the risk, of course, increases as you get older. And majority of patients with colon cancer develop cancer at age 50 and older. But you got to look at those 12% in that circle. 12% of colon cancer develop in people with younger than age 50. And now we are seeing increasing incidence of colon cancer in younger adults. Race also, there's highest colon cancer risk in non-Hispanic Black African Americans, followed by American Indians, and then Asian actually have the lowest, among different ethnicities, lowest risk of colon cancer. We'll move on to what are some of the modifiable risk factors. Physical inactivity, sedentary lifestyle. with all other diseases, is also associated with risk of having colon cancer. Obesity is another thing. It's estimated about 50% higher risk of colon cancer with obesity, and same with women. Other things like diet is very important. Diet may cause increase in colon cancer indirectly by having increase in calorie intake. And again, that leads to obesity. Red meat and processed meats are associated with increased risk of colon cancer. It's estimated about 18% for every 18% increased risk with every 50 grams per day of processed meats, and 12% for 100 milligrams of red meat. Generally speaking, processed meats like sausage, hot dog, bacon, and red meat is not good friend of your colon. Also, charbroiled meat, those Korean barbecue, don't burn your meat too much. Those burnt charred part will cause more DNA mutation. Sorry, guys. It's a good thing I'm not talking about this on weekends. Of course, I call this toxins, smoking and alcohol. Smoking, we all know smoking causes cancer in all different organs, and so does in colon as well. Alcohol, excessive alcohol, more than 3 drinks a day. Again, both of them induce more mutations in your DNA cells lining the colon cancer. So what can we do to prevent colon cancer? Again, physical exercise. American Cancer Society recommends to engage in 3 to 5 hours a week of moderate intensity activity. Try to minimize red meat, processed meats. Instead, exchange it with fruits, vegetable, fish, low-calorie, low-fat diet, and include a lot of fiber, grain, and whatnot. Fiber is an interesting thing. Fiber has been implemented on reducing colon cancer. Some studies suggested 20 to 40% reduction in colon cancer risk, although it's somewhat controversial because there are some other randomized controlled trials that was kind of inconclusive. But I think fiber is really good for your colon because it has other benefits. It lowers your cholesterol, it lowers your blood sugar, prevents diabetes, and prevents heart disease. Recommend about 30 to 35 grams of fiber a day, and you can do that by natural diet, by incorporating a lot of fruit, grains, vegetables, seeds, nuts, legumes. If you cannot, then take some fiber supplement, like over-the-counter fiber supplement, and it's easy to follow, about 30 to 35 grams per day. The idea is that fiber kind of speeds up the colon processing, thus minimizing the stool toxin in touch with the lining of your colon. Also, fiber promotes a lot of good bacteria to grow and promotes healthy microbiome in your colon, which provides a lot of protective effect for your colon from colon cancer. Other things suggested, although this is not 100% real, I don't know if it's 100% real, but suggested are calcium consumption may have protective effect. Vitamin D have been implemented in the past, low risk of cancer. Garlic, some observational studies suggested especially Asians, we eat a lot of garlic, so garlic is apparently have some effect on it. Aspirin is actually true. Aspirin has been found to have a protective effect for colon cancer. In fact, American Gastroenterologist Association in 2021 published this practice update. An average risk, less than 70-year-old with life expectancy of at least 10 years, who has 10-year cardiovascular disease risk of at least 10%, and not at high risk of bleeding, should use aspirin just for the sole purpose of preventing colon cancer. Now, I know there's a lot of medical stuff there. That's probably your primary care doctor to figure out. But basically, it sounds like if you're taking aspirin, it probably does have a protective effect on your colon. And definitely those who had colon cancer should consider taking prophylactic aspirin daily. So what happens after you get colon cancer? Well, what are my chances of surviving through this? Overall, for everyone, 5-year relative survival rate is about 64%. So by 5 years later, about 2/3 still survive, 1/3 will die from colon cancer. Similar with the rectal cancer. But you have to look at different stages of colon cancer. So colon cancer at stage 1 and 2, mainly localized within colon. Cancer cells are found only in colon and rectum, the first 2 pictures over there. So they're confined to the colon. That's stage 1 and stage 2. By the time it reaches stage 3, cancer cells have left the colon, but only in the local areas, like in the surrounding lymph nodes and surrounding area. That's stage 3. Now, if it progresses further, then you have metastatic colon cancer, stage 4. Now the cancer has actually gotten bigger, went right through the wall of the colon, out of the regional area, and to distant organs like your liver, lung, and other areas. So why is that important? Well, if you break down the survival rate among different stages of colon cancer, you look at stage 1 and 2, you find this cancer early on, you cut them out, and you treat them. Your survival rate is 90%, 5-0. Almost everyone survives. If it's stage 3, still pretty good, 71%. But if you don't find it early and reach stage 4, 14%. There's dramatic reduction in survival rate if you find this cancer late. So this is the importance of colon cancer screening. We screen the colon cancer to find this cancer early and to prevent colon cancer. So the history behind colon cancer screening. American Cancer Society recommended screening in early 1970s. We started recommending we should all go for screening, but it wasn't really implemented heavily. But in 1985, President Reagan developed colon cancer. That brought a lot of awareness about colon cancer. Screening takes off. And then after that, we start noticing incidence of colon cancer decreasing. And the screening was predominantly through colonoscopy in the year 2000. And colonoscopy prevents colon cancer by removing the polyps because, like I said, most colon cancer come from polyps. And also by detecting cancer in early stage so we can improve survival rate in these people. If you look at the chart of trends and incidence rates, if you look at 1975 to 2017, clearly you can see the decreasing trend after we started really implementing colon cancer screening. There's 30% reduction between the year of about 2000 to 2017. So similar to the death rate from colon cancer, you can see the clearly decreasing number of people dying from colon cancer. Between year 1970 to 2018, there has been decreasing colon cancer to about 55%. However, if you look at the statistics, despite all these findings, only 1 in 3 eligible Americans are up to date with colon cancer screening. Only 1 in 3 Americans are up to date with colon cancer screening. So CDC actually estimated about 68% of death from colon cancer could be avoided if everybody went through screening. And this is why we have to bring a lot of awareness about this colon cancer screening. And this tends to be towards more younger group between the age 50 to 64. And older groups tend to be more compliant with going through screening. And there is alarming rise in colon cancer among young adults, even below the age of 50. So, like I said, there's increasing incidence in adults under the age of 50 with colon cancer. If you remember Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, in 2016, he died of colon cancer. He was only 39 years old. About 18,000 under the age of 50 will be diagnosed with colon cancer this year. That calculates to about 49 diagnosed every day, and 10 will die every day. And these are people who are younger than age 50. It's been rising since 1970s, but in the past decade, it has been rising dramatically. Like I said, there's a pretty high percentage increase in colon cancer in between year 2000 to 2012. And sad part is these cancer tend to be more aggressive. They tend to be larger, and they tend to be more late stage, and they have metastatic disease. Why? We were not 100% sure, probably multiple different factors. It doesn't seem to be just America, it seems to be worldwide, in Europe, Asia, Australia, and different parts of the world. Could be environmental. I'm sure there's some dietary factor to it because of increased red meat consumption, increased processed meat consumption, increased fast foods, maybe heavy alcohol, other maybe environmental toxins. The colobactin is something that's been published recently. Interesting. It's E. coli toxin. Apparently, this toxin, exposed to this E. coli toxin early on in your life, increases your risk of colon cancer later on. So there might be some link between having E. coli bacteria infection early in your life. So then, when should we start screening? Again, initially in 1995, U.S. Preventive Service Task Force recommended to start screening in people with age 50. But then American College of Gastroenterology recommended African Americans should start at age 45 because they're definitely at higher risk. And then American Cancer Society said, wait, it seems like there are more and more younger people are developing colon cancer. We recommend starting colon cancer for everyone age 45. So in 2018, that was implemented. And so did all these other organizations start following that recommendation. And finally, U.S. Preventive Service Task Force finalized that recommendation year 2021. So now, everyone, when you turn age 45, you should start getting screening for colon cancer by seeing your doctor first. What about those with family history? When should they start? So if you do have significant family history, let's say you have first-degree relative of colon cancer who had colon cancer younger than age 60, or if you had two first-degree relatives with colon cancer at any age. Remember those two groups I told you, their relative risk increased about 4-fold higher. If you have this family history, you should start colon cancer at age 40 or 10 years prior to the age of diagnosis, whichever comes earlier. And following the first screening, the interval should be every 5 years. If you have any first-degree relative diagnosed colon cancer older than age 60, then you should still start at age 40, but the interval can be per average risk individual, so it can be 10 years, and we'll talk about that later. Then a lot of people then ask, when should I stop screening? I can't really go screening forever. So the recommendation is between age 76 and 85, you should start considering, you can consider stopping, but it should be an individual one. You should take into account your overall health, your prior screening history, think about the benefit versus the harm. If you're still out there playing golf and you know you're going to live another 10 years, I think you're still a candidate to go for screening. Also the preference and values. Some patients absolutely say, okay, that's it, I'm not going through this ever again. Definitely those who have not been screened before, even when you're like 80, you should probably go for screening. And like I said, if you're healthy enough or without any substantial limited life expectancy. But if you reach 86 and above, just screening colonoscopy is definitely not recommended. At that point, we believe that risk outweighs the benefit. Now, we'll move on to different options for screening. So we can divide into two major groups. There's stool-based testing, and there's directly visualizing tests, okay? The stool-based tests include guaiac fecal occult blood test, or fecal immunochemical test, or fecal immunochemical test with DNA, otherwise known as Cologuard. I'm sure you've seen that on your commercial all the time. And then the direct visualization, of course, colonoscopy, or CT colonogram, or sigmoidoscopy, which is kind of like colonoscopy. So this fecal occult blood test it's largely replaced by FIT. We rarely use this anyways nowadays because it's checking for any kind of occult blood or hidden blood in your stool. And you have to obtain 3 consecutive stool samples to increase your sensitivity, and you have to kind of avoid the NSAIDs, or like Motrin, ibuprofen, leave for up to 7 days. You have to avoid vitamin C. So it's kind of cumbersome to go through this test, so we rarely do this. Instead, fecal immunochemical test, which is similar, it also detecting hidden blood, but it does it through using antibodies that can detect the blood in your stool. It's actually 2 times more powerful than the guaiac test, so this is preferred over the guaiac-based testing. It can detect up to 70% of colon cancer, but only 30% of large polyps. But their sensitivity and specificity is pretty high. It's high enough to be qualified to be used as a screening tool. You only have to obtain 1 stool sample. There's no dietary restriction. It's pretty simple, straightforward. But like I said, this is not as effective as colonoscopy. And therefore, if you do this, then you have to do this annually. Again, this is reserved for only those with average risk. No family history, no history of colon polyps. This Cologuard, I know I spelled the guard wrong. It's actually G-U-A-R-D, but it's a FIT plus DNA test. So it detects blood mutation in DNA of cancer cells in the stool. So it's basically detecting any DNA mutation of cancer cells in your stool on top of the hidden blood. So they did that to boost that detection rate. So it goes up to 90% detection rate of colon cancer. And also large polyp, from 30% it goes up to 42%. So they claim this is a more powerful tool for screening colon cancer. And this is approved by FDA. But there is a pretty high false positive rate. And I think we still need some long-term data to figure out what to do with those with false positive Cologuard. And it's recommended to, if you do this test, recommended to repeat it every 1 to 3 years. This is the latest blood-based test, and nobody really uses it. But it is FDA approved, and it is approved for average risk individual. There are 2 FDA approved blood tests, SHIELD and FB-Pro-Colon. It's basically detecting cell-free DNA. So any kind of circulating free DNA in your blood, DNA of cancers, tumor DNA. Apparently, they collect all that and some other proteins and proteomes and whatnot, and they go through this AI algorithms, and they pop up a number that can give you your risk of having colon cancer, which is apparently pretty sensitive. But again, this is a screening test, but not a preventive test, because their sensitivity for detecting polyps is pretty low, only 13%. So this is not to be used for preventing colon cancer. It could be used for screening for colon cancer, if you have colon cancer or not. Again, I've never ordered this test, but it is FDA approved. CT colonogram, basically you go through the CT scan and they generate this 3-dimensional picture of your colon, and they can actually physically see if there's any polyps. Apparently, any kind of the polyp sensitivity is pretty high, but then we encounter sometimes really flat polyps, and those flat ones will not be seen very well on CT scan. Number 2, to prepare for CT colonogram, they actually insert a tube through your anus and actually blow up your colon. It's kind of uncomfortable. So it's not clearly more comfortable than colonoscopy. And right, and no sedation. You're wide awake when they do that. And if they find any kind of polyp, you have to go through colonoscopy to remove it. So And again, think about all the cumulative radiation. You go through this every 5 years, you're accumulating all that radiation. So it's rarely used for screening, only for those who are very, very ill and sick and cannot tolerate any procedures, but really have to take a look at the colon to see if there's anything there. Those individuals, we may use this. Finally, again, this is really not being used, but it is there, a colon capsule, basically a little capsule with a camera inside. You swallow it, it'll travel through your intestines, through your colon, and take pictures, and those pictures are transmitted to your receiver, and then we hook it up to computer and watch it like a video. Only in patients who had incomplete colonoscopy, not for everyone. And again, role is kind of uncertain. They do have acceptable sensitivity and specificity, but we never really use this for screening. Sigmoidoscopy is kind of like colonoscopy, but they insert the tube with a camera only about third way into your colon. And if you find any polyps in that area, then you have to go through colonoscopy. Again, we don't use it. I think Kaiser may still do this, I'm not sure. Colonoscopy, this is the gold standard. Everything compares to colonoscopy. All different studies, screening studies, have to compare with colonoscopy to validate their tool for screening. It's basically a long tube with a camera. We insert it from one end of the colon, as you can see, and push it all the way to the other end, and we examine the entire colon directly through camera. And as you can see, detection of colon cancer, pretty much 100%. You can't miss colon cancer through colonoscopy. Even polyps, 95% of the time we find these polyps. And this is a one-step process. When we're doing this, we remove them and prevent colon cancer. And because this is such a powerful test that the interval, if you have a normal colon, the interval can be up to 10 years. You don't have to do anything. And during that 10-year interval, you don't have to do any kind of screening test, stool test, or anything. Again, with any kind of procedures, there's always some risk that follow with a procedure. There's a possible risk of infection, bleeding, and perforation. And a perforation sounds horrible, but overall, generally speaking, overall population, the risk is very low. It's about 1 in 3,000. And if you do one under a very good endoscopist like Dr. Fang, the risk is zero. Anyways, so if we break down the screening test, Tier 1, this is according to the US Multi-Specialty Task Force. Tier 1 is recommended colonoscopy and the annual fecal immunochemical test. Tier 2 is CT scan, Cologuard, and sigmoidoscopy. Tier 3 is capsule endoscopy. Again, among all these tests, colonoscopy is the only one-step test. It's a direct test where you visualize, you detect, and you remove. All the other tests are two-step tests that requires colonoscopy. If any of them return positive, then you have to go through colonoscopy. Like I said, their detection reduction is pretty significant, 70%. Mortality, death reduction is pretty high. It's the highest sensitivity among all tests, and it is regarded as gold standard. Something about polyp removal. When you remove the polyp with either these little tools that we use during colonoscopy, little biopsy forceps or the wire loops, remember when we cut these polyps out, there's no pain because there's no pain nerves in the inner lining of colon. A lot of patients ask me, oh, is it going to hurt? No, there's absolutely no pain. And we can remove multiple polyps all at once. You just do it once, we take care of everything. And then afterwards, when to repeat your colonoscopy will depend on how many of these polyps you remove, depending on the size of this polyp and what pathology comes back afterwards. And usually if you do find polyps, it'll be about 3 to 5 years, not 10 years. Again, there's some risk of perforation and bleeding, but again, like I said, it's very minimal. After you remove these polyps, do they come back again? No, they don't come back again. After we remove them, they're gone. However, once you have polyp, they remove it. Once you have these polyps, then the risk of having recurrent polyp, a new polyp popping out in a different part of your colon is about 25 to 30%. And this is the reason why, if we do find polyps, we bring the patients back sooner than 10 years. I think that's about it. Oops, I didn't want to show you this. Oh, you want to see? All right, so these are some of the pictures of polyp. This is what polyp looks like. I saved this for CME for hospital. But anyways, here's what polyp looks like. You can see that little thing up there. That is polyp. That's a benign polyp, but it'll keep growing and get big and nasty and start bleeding. And you can see this can like bleed. So sometimes, even when a 20-year-old comes in with, I'm having some blood in my stool, and everybody says, oh, it's hemorrhoid. This is the reason we don't say, I just ignore it. We say, it could be hemorrhoid, but we got to look, because sometimes you have these polyps that are bleeding. So you do the colonoscopy, easily removed. You just cut it out very easily. Sometimes polyps, can you see that polyp? Very flat. You see that roundy area, pale area, that whole thing is a polyp. And this is why CT scan or anything like that will be very hard to detect these flat polyps. In fact, these are very hard to detect. That these are the dangerous ones that will cause what we call interval colon cancer. Those interval colon cancers are colon cancers that you develop despite going through colonoscopy. Even through colonoscopy, we have to be very careful, look carefully for these flat polyps. Again, very easy to remove. We cut them out and they're gone. Sometimes they're big, huge. It's like carpeting the whole rectum. Now, in the past, these large polyps, we would say, forget it, you got to get surgery. And we used to send all these patients to surgery. Now, technology has evolved, our skills have evolved. We have multiple different tools. We can easily remove this through colonoscopy without going through surgery. This large carpeted polyp, this huge polyp is, oh, where did the, well, anyways, the picture for the remove, oh, here it is. It's, yeah, you can easily remove it and get rid of it nicely, so it's all gone. So this will prevent you from having going through surgery. So that's it. Thank you for your attention. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, I can answer.